Welcome to the Fight Lawyer Podcast, where we discuss combat sports and the law. Our guest today is UFC Hall of Famer and Triple Crown champion, Dan the Beast Severn. Dan, thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
You are welcome, Dmitry.
When did you start competing in combat sports, and how did you develop into the multi-sport athlete that you ultimately became?
Well, I'm not certain. Would you consider amateur wrestling a combat sport? A lot would, because when you think of the original Olympic Games, what did it really consist of? Wrestling was probably the forefront of almost all sports. But that started my journey in the world of amateur wrestling. Started back in 1969.
And how long did you compete in wrestling?
Oh, as far as I'm concerned, I'm still an active competitor in that. I just haven't been in an actual, tournament in a while. But I'm on the mats minimum of, probably 4 days a week minimum. And there's sometimes I'll be on there, 6-7 times a week. But that's my cup of coffee. That's my rush for the day. It helps get me going. They'll give you a couple of timetables. I started in 1969. And I started teaching amateur wrestling by 1971, as being a freshman in high school. Through a series of kind of unique circumstances. A high school wrestling coach, wonderful man, he's still alive. He was a very robust, very heavy-set man at the time. He's not now. But at the time, he was probably, 5'6", and probably weighed 350 pounds. And he was built like a butterball turkey. And I don't mean to say that mean. I've seen that very, very lovingly as a man. He was a fantastic coach for motivation, and he recognized talent in the room. So when it came to instruction, if you were the best guy that did the double leg takedown, he would say, Dmitry, you teach us the double leg takedown. Okay, Severn, you went to wrestling camp this past summer. Well, what did you learn? Well, coach, I learned this thing called cradles. Well, teach us cradles. Well, one hand goes this way, other hand goes that way. You push with the head like this. But what does every child always ask? They always ask the question, why? Why did my hand go here? Why did my head go there? And when I could answer the question, why I'm doing what I'm doing, that's literally when my career took off for myself. And I really think, even though I was scared to death to teach my fellow teammates, because I didn't really know what I was doing. But when, again, a simple child question of why. And that's kind of what's led, and literally everything I do now, I question why I do this, why I do that, and I come up with the mechanics. Because now, fast forward, I teach everything from professional wrestling, mixed martial arts, catch wrestling, submission grappling, whether it be gi or non-gi applications. I do stuff with law enforcement, corrections, air marshals, border patrol, military. So, and the ironic part is, I've never been any of the above. I kind of look like a military personnel because I do have that Dudley Do-It chin and I have a mustache, so I look like one of them. But I would say that I understand physical mechanics, whereas everyone has their gift in life, and that is my gift. If there's a better widget to be made when it comes to physical mechanics, I'm the guy that will make it for you. I just wish I could sing or dance. I'd be doing something else. You'd be CBN, America's Got Talent.
Now, you've been an athlete virtually your entire life. How important do you think sports are to developing a well-rounded human being, instilling all those good things like discipline, respect, hard work?
I think it's more important now than ever because of the millennial race that is coming up. I should say the millennial generation that's coming on up. And the way that with each generation, the watering down of values. Now we live in this world that, there's no longer corporal punishments in our school system. That's been gone for, probably 20-some years now. And, kids can go and say someone was got off of things to the teachers, and then they stand there boldly like, oh, touch me, and my parents will sue. I'm thinking, I remember walking into classrooms, and that paddle was proudly displayed, and even on it was burned into it, Board of Education. And if you got out of line and someone lit you up, I guarantee you were not going to get out of line again. And so there used to be repercussions for your actions. Nowadays, everyone thinks that they're entitled to say and or do whatever they want, and that is not the case. Athletics, just to answer that question more than ever, that's just one aspect of discipline. The other aspect is the fact that we live in such a high-tech society that most young people are disengaged. I run a training facility. As I speak to you, I'm sitting here in my 10,000 square foot training facility here in Coldwater, Michigan. My clientele is probably 98 to 99% males. And I really don't know if I'm actually running a training facility or a halfway house, taking young boys and turning them into accountable young men. Because I don't conform to what our high schools do. When they come in here, I'll meet them at the door. When I see their heads down, I'm like, Dmitriy, stand up straight, look me in the eyes, shake my hand when you come in there. And so I'm teaching them habits, because you go into a shopping mall today, and you just do a quick 360-degree spin. You find the person that does not, I'll repeat that, does not have a cell phone in their hand, and they are looking down. They're not even looking where they're walking to, and they're engrossed in technology and a machine. They're not even engage with people. I could probably go on and on about it's a great tool if you use it as a tool, but how it has just eliminated social ability and manners and things of that nature. And there's no censorship towards your kids, because I know that when my kids were growing up, there's certain things I would not allow them to watch, period. As they're older and then they've moved on, stuff like this, and they have their own homes, stuff like that. Well, you do what you want, but this is my house. This is how you're going to act underneath my roof. Once you're off on your own, well, I really don't have much covering over you, but I'll still speak my piece when I see you, if you dare come around.
Understood. So let's transition a bit. Let's talk about your career and pre-regulated MMA, your UFC debut in '94. How was it different than what you see on TV today?
Oh, it's hugely different. The product that you see on television today is known as MMA, which stands for Mixed Martial Arts. Mixed Martial Arts today has, it's either 47 or 49 rules. I forget what the exact number. There might even be one more for all I know here now. And you go against one opponent, you wear a pair of gloves, and on and on. Back in the NHB, which stood for No Holds Barred era, there were only two rules that the athletes had to abide by, that being, do not bite your opponent, and rule number 2, do not stick any fingers in their eye sockets, no eye gouging. End of the rules. Any that your imagination could come up, you were good to go. There were no weight classes. There were no rounds. There was unlimited time. And it was bare-knuckled, and it was an 8-man tournament. The same 2-hour that still plays to this day, where you face one opponent on a card. You had to go through 3 men in a night. When I say 3 men, because women were not competing at this time.
Now, did you know what to expect before going in? And if not, what did you think you were getting yourself into?
Well, I had a buddy of mine who watched I don't know, he watched, it's either UFC 1 or UFC 2, one of those two. Again, educate people. Pay-per-view was not as prevalent back in '94 as it is today. Cell phones were not as high-tech back then as they are today. So, a lot of people that are listening to this are like, well, gosh, you should have been able to watch that cell phone. No, you didn't. It was not on cell phones at that point in time. Matter of fact, at that point in time, pay-per-views were only offered up in major cities. So I live in the state of Michigan. So in a state like Michigan, yeah, they might have it in Lansing, they might have it in Detroit, they might have it over in Grand Rapids, but in the outlying areas, the more remote areas, no, they don't. That was not available. So did I know this thing even existed? No. So like I said, a friend of mine who happened to watch one of the very first shows copies the show on an old VHS tape and says, "Hey, you got to think about doing this." Now, as I'm watching this VHS tape, I'm seeing people being soccer kicked in the face. I'm seeing teeth flying on out. And I'm looking at my buddy. I go, these are not exactly skills I possess. But then he says, he goes on to say, he says, look at this skinny little guy doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Of course, he was referring to Hoist Gracie. And as I'm watching, I've never really been exposed to Jiu-Jitsu. But to me, it's like, it just looks like wrestling in pajamas to me is what it basically looked like. I said, I guess if a guy's close enough to punch or to kick, he's got to be within that arm's distance, that leg distance. I will simply step outside of range, close the distance, and then I'll welcome to my world. I mean, literally, that was my basic game plan. That's all it was. So there were some various advertisements in a number of different martial arts magazines. And the UFC took out a full-page ad, like, do you want to be a cage fighter and things of that nature. And I simply just filled out the application and said that I'm in. Now, no one ever called me back because I was told that they were receiving a couple hundred applications on a daily basis. Now, I had already turned pro as a professional wrestler as of the 1992 Olympics. So that was my first profession, and I happened to be heading up to Los Angeles on a professional wrestling card. So a few phone calls were made by, I just can't believe I just drew a blank. Phyllis Lee, by Phyllis Lee, and she was able to get hold of Art Davey, and Art Davey came over, and he watched me in my professionals match, and then afterwards I came over and was introduced to him and met. The first words out of Art Davies' mouth was, "You do realize what we do is real, don't you?" And I said, "Well, yes, I do that, Mr. Davey." And he said, "What's your professional fight record?" "Well, I don't have one of those." Well, he goes, "Well, what's your amateur fight record?" I said, "Well, I don't have one of those either." He says, "Well, what are your skill sets?" I go, "Well, I'm an amateur wrestler. I've been an amateur wrestler at that time for 26 years. And he's like, "Well," he goes, "amateur wrestling has a lot of rules and regulations." And I'm thinking, I can tell I'm being blown off at this point in time. He's not really interested in me. And I'm not going to let anyone ever talk down to me about my amateur wrestling career. I simply, as he concluded, I go, "That is true, Mr. Davey, that amateur wrestling has a lot of rules and regulations." I said, "Until you have a foreign opponent on foreign soil," I said, "it'll be the closest thing you'll ever see to one of your UFC-style matches." And he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Let me reiterate my first international experience ever at, 17 years of age. I'm part of a U.S. All-Star team that travels to the country of Turkey. And we're a team of 16 to 18-year-olds. And we're supposed to be going up against Turkish wrestlers 16 to 18 years of age. Well, my first opponent is against a 35-year-old military man. I mean, fully aged. He's muscular all over. He's got a crew cut and ugliness. He's just a combination of meanness and ugliness all intertwined. And he's just stalking back and forth like this caged animal. Just can't wait to get a piece of this weenie-looking American because, again, 17 years of age. Oh, my hair was a lot longer and a lot more slender built. And when the referee started the match, my opponent basically, as we advanced toward each other, he did this technique known as a collar tie, where he reached down up and cups the back of my head. In the process of him reaching back and cupping the back of my head, he grabs some wad of my hair. And literally, he just yanks it back to where my head backs on it, and then he headbutts me, splitting my eyebrow open. And now to add insult to injury, he tears a wad of my hair right out of my head. So as I'm backpedaling, I got blood trickling down my face, and I'm looking at the referee like, well, why is this match continuing? My opponent should be disqualified for unsportsmanlike conduct. At least that's the way the rule's supposed to read. Well, as I always tell people, well, we're not in Kansas City there anymore, Toto. We're in his backyard. The referee is probably related to him, and I'm not going to get a fair shake. And at this time there, you did not stop matches for blood. If you have bloody nose, something like this, you did not stop matches. You actually wrestled with a handkerchief inside of your singlet. So if you had a bloody nose, split lip, or whatever, you reach and you pull your handkerchief out, you wipe, and you keep on going. There was no timeouts for anything. And so basically, I reach in, wipe, and action is still continuing. And, I basically, now I'm mad. I took him down. He went down, and in the sport of wrestling, you don't want to be on your back for the pin. So he gets off the back, he's down, belly down. I'm basically laying up on top of him, and there's a technique known as the cross face, where you take the bony portion of your forearm, and you take it right across the opponent's face, implementing pain in the process of basically trying to turn it, stuff like this. Well, you can be nice and put it in short range, or you can wind back and really give almost like you're punching him, but you're hitting him with your forearm. Well, I'm motivated. I wind back, and I slam across his face. I know I broke his nose because I got blood pouring out of his nose, but all of a sudden I feel all this pain because he's biting into my forearm, trying to take a chunk of U.S. grade A out. And that's when I always tell people that's when my cheese slipped off this cracker, because now I'm going to finish him off because I reach up to grab my wrist because I'm going to pull back on this forearm, and I'm going to jam that piece of cartilage that's in your bone back into the black hole of space called his brain, and they can bury his carcass out in the sand dune. I don't care anymore because the man's trying to hurt me. It's going to be him or me, and I choose me. So referee actually blows a whistle, and as I'm standing up, he's penalizing me for an illegal technique. I'm showing him the fang marks in my forearm. He penalized my opponent for an illegal maneuver. At the end of the first round, matches were 3 rounds, 3-minute rounds. At the end of the first round, he had a 1-minute break, and I head back to my corner. I'm a bloody mess, so I'm getting cleaned up back there. He's heading back to his corner. He's a bloody mess. Now, his coach is so angry at his athlete because I'm beating him by 1 point. But his Turkish coach is so mad at his athlete that he pulls out a stick about the thickness of a broom handle and proceeds to beat his athlete to motivate him. So when people ask me nowadays, like when I climb the cage, just like we did, would I anticipate? I go, am I afraid when I walk through that cage? No. I can speak the language, and I'm probably never further than probably 35, 40 feet from a medical practitioner, or I can look up at the referee and say, hey, I've had enough fun for the night, or I can tap on out. So my international, long so I know, my international amateur wrestling experience in both freestyle and Greco-Roman prepared me very, very well for cage fighting. I always tell people I've had 3 careers in my life: amateur wrestling, professional wrestling, and cage fighting. And the safest thing I've ever did is cage fighting. Think about that one.
That's funny. Now, you mentioned you were an Olympic athlete, you were an Olympic wrestler prior to venturing into MMA. Why do you think there's no professional market out there for wrestling and some other combat sports the way there now is for MMA?
Wrestling is too complicated for the average spectator to watch. I mean, I've been about with my entire life, and they're just the only people that you saw at, like, in my high school days, the only people that came watch your high school matches would be moms, dads, aunts, uncles, and maybe a grandparent. It's not a spectator-friendly sport. Joe Average walking down the street cannot watch a match and understand all the little technical aspects of it. Well, think about this, Dmitry. Even in mixed martial arts today, when is the most boring part of an MMA match? When they hit the ground, because the average spectator does not understand what is happening down on the ground. I have a great appreciation because, the sport of amateur wrestling teaches you the principles of leverage. Another word for leverage is pain. Your opponent is not rolling over on their back and getting pinned because you're tickling them going coochie coo and they're going to roll on over and get pinned. No, it's because you are imposing your will upon them. But because people that you have respected cannot see the pain, they don't understand the pain. In MMA, you can see the punch, you can see the kick, you can see the kick up and slam. But once you're down on the ground, no, unless you got like maybe a good arm bar or something like this, where you see the good shove where he's lifted, but anything else, no.
I understand. So now the big controversy these days in MMA is PED abuse. Do you think that drugs should be regulated? If so, how strongly? And will we ever see the sport drug-free?
I don't think they'll ever see it drug-free. I think it's always are people getting caught. And I'll look at that as two different ways. Maybe there should be two different divisions for mixed martial arts, just like bodybuilding, because they have an amateur level and then they have the professional level. And the amateurs in bodybuilding, they look like 98-pound weaklings compared to the pros, because the pros, they're on all the good stuff. But it doesn't mean that the amateurs are totally clean, because if you ever, I've actually read some of the fine print on it. In a lot of the amateurs, it just says must be clean in the past, whatever, I think 6 months or something like that. So they could have been cycling at that point in time. I'm not trying to bash bodybuilding, because it's there's a lot of people that do it the right way. But as a competition, as a general broad stroke, I'll simply say that it's tainted by a lot of chemicals that would test people positive. They would never clear what the USOC, the United States Olympic Committee, mandates. You really have to watch out what you do when you're on the level. You can take what would then maybe simply a nasal mist, that because your nose is stuffed up, it would test you positive. There have been opportunities, or actually, maybe that's not the wrong word. Maybe the temptation. That's my best word to say. The temptation has been there. My entire life, whether it be going into smoke marijuana or to do LSD or coke or whatever have you, or steroids. I've had businessmen offer me contracts and say that we will take care of all your financial obligations. We just want a percentage of the winnings. But part of this tab is you must get with our doctors at your size and your body weight. We could probably easily get you to about 315, ripped at about 6% body fat. You'd have probably 35 to 40% more power than what you do already. I'm thinking to myself, I already possess the gift of power. If I had 35 to 40 more percent of power, I'd be pulling body parts off of people and I'd be beating them with the bloody stump. But Dmitry, I can look at myself in the mirror. I can look at the awards I've accomplished, and I simply know that I won them based upon my abilities. I didn't have to take a pill. I didn't have to stick a syringe in my hind end. I'm lifetime chemical free, and I pride myself in that. I would even, and I would have more respect for some of these athletes that have tested positive, because there are several of them. Tell them, do as I say and not as I did. Because there is no pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. There's nothing good that's going to come out of it for you. I did this route. This is what it did for me. And, I wish I could have turned the clock back to time, but at the time, I thought it would give me the edge. It would do this, it would do that. And I look at, I really, the way I look at things is that those that do participate in that, again, a lot of people that I've gone against, I've gone up against a lot of people that are chemically enhanced, and to me that they are weak-minded. They don't believe in their capabilities in the first place. I know what I'm capable of doing, and I'm a nice guy until I step on a mat or step into a cage. I'll shake your hand beforehand. There's not like I'm creating animosity. I'm not creating any kind of hatred or nothing like that. I will shake your hand beforehand. I will shake your hand after. No hard feelings for what's going to come down the pipe. I will abide by the rules. On that note, when No Holds Barred was transitioning to mixed martial arts, there was a huge change. It didn't happen overnight, is I guess way of saying it. So state by state, it was changing. There's only a few states that just really in this past year allowed MMA to take place, like New York, for example, that they allowed pro-level MMA to take place. So, as I'm competing all over the United States, there were sometimes I would be in a cage. I'm holding my opponent either up against cage wall or down on the mat, and I would actually have to look at the referee and go, "Hey ref, am I allowed to?" And I know I had to boggle my opponent for a sheer fact that I'm carrying on a conversation with the referee while I'm still fighting him. But I always tell people I've never had any rule violations against me though either.
So do you agree with the no tolerance policy that, for example, one violation should, warrant a ban for life?
I don't think it should be one and done like that. No, that's because there are some people that really don't know about some of the prescription stuff that they are taking. They really don't know if it's allowed or not. So I will simply say that there is something about there is an innocence for some. And then there's others that they blatantly know. So I don't think you can simply make that broad statement onto that. It'd be a one and done. I think that if they're caught, maybe the first time, you got to hit them in the pocketbook, and you have to hit them with a certain time duration. Yeah, I'm a big believer in the 3 strikes you're out. So do it once, hit them with this. Second time up there, boom, you're doubling down on everything. Third, 3 strikes, you're out. Boom, it's gone at that point down because now you're stupid.
And some of these people who are caught for abusing drugs in various forms, they assert a taint defense, that they unwittingly perhaps consumed something and therefore aren't at fault for it. In your experience, how common is that? What do you do to prevent that?
Well, again, a lot of it's just education. It's when again, I had to go back to my days of being an amateur wrestler, and then just going through all the stuff that I went through for coming up to World Championships, Pan American Games, things of that nature. That's when testing, random testing. Not everyone was going to be tested because this was cost prohibited at that time, but they would do random testing on those that. The bodies would kind of show like, well, this guy's got way more musculature than what the normal character would have. So there was always random testing that would be taking place. So, our coaches were really good about knowing, watch that you're not taking this, or this. And a lot of it was just like, something as simple as a nasal mist. I know I've used that a couple of times right now, but that's that's how easily it could test you positive.
Now, do you think that it's more common in MMA than in other sports? Because the argument is that if you have a combat sport, the regulation should be a lot stricter because the potential for long-term damage could be a lot worse.
No, I'll disagree on that. I mean, there's a lot of sports that on pro level where athletes are chemically enhanced. So to simply just to pinpoint it at MMA, no. I mean, it's prevalent in a lot of pro level sports because it's you push it like when you think about like American football alone, to see a lineman that is 300 plus pounds that can do a 40-yard dash. And the speeds that they're doing, I mean, they're like moving freight trains. Yeah, you tell me that that's natural? There are some gifted athletes, not as many as what are there. There are a number of athletes that are getting a little bit of a helping hand through the pharmacy world.
Now, what's your status in the fight game now? Are you still actively competing? And if not, what are you up to these days?
Well, I was hoping to have actually done a match basically a little over a year ago. But, I'm very selective at this point. And the reason being that, well, I am a senior citizen. And do I really wish to go against any of the young bucks right now? No. I did well for myself at the time duration I was involved. As a matter of fact, I doubt if they'll ever find another athlete that will probably have as long of a career that I have had. But I am still involved in the industry. I do have my own MMA promotion known as Dangers of MMA. It started way back during still the No Holds Barred era. And I'll still be involved with it, whether I continue to run shows myself or be involved with other promotions, as long as they're doing things the right way. Now, I also have a professional wrestling company that I run, POG Wrestling. POG stands for Price of Glory. And then I have a 10,000 square foot training facility on my property in Coldwater, Michigan. So ongoing classes, even if I'm not there, I've got great instructors that oversee classes in my absence. And then there's still the ongoing work that I do with first responders, with law enforcement, corrections, and military, and so on. So I'll never worry about things to do, that's for sure. I'm worried about running out of time.
Well, Dan, it's been so great of you to join us. Thanks so much. Where can people go to learn more about your upcoming appearances and where to find you?
Probably just the best thing. If I should just promote the website, www.dansevern.com. Severn spelled S-E-V like Victor, E-R-N like Nancy. Dan at dansevern.com. dansevern.com is the website. That's just my email address that's going into right now. They're both pretty similar. But you'll see all of my social media platforms for Facebook, Twitter, and so on. So you can click on and just see what all that I am up to.
And that's great. Dan, once again, thank you so much for joining us, taking the time to do this.
Thank you, Dmitriy, for having me on.
And that's our interview with Dan Severn. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you had a great time. My name's Dmitriy Shakhnevich, and if you want to learn more about me, please visit www.dshacklaw.com. And this is the Fight Lawyer Podcast. Till next time, folks.